Today marks the last day of Hanukkah, and as a bit of a gift to all of you, myself and 7 other friends have decided to release 8 crazy reviews of the animated Adam Sandler film, 8 Crazy Nights, all one day after the other, for each day of Hanukkah. Honestly, it sounded like an awesome idea when it was first pitched to me. 8 reviews in a row, all pertaining to Adam Sandler. Not only did that sound like a great idea, it was an idea that, to my knowledge, hadn't been pulled off by anyone ever. Okay, so we may have missed the mark by a day or 2 or month, who cares, who's counting, I'm not, I might be. Anywho, I know that there's a lot of negative reviews of this movie, as well as a lot of reviews saying this movie is a guilty pleasure, but you don't see a lot of reviews out there saying that it's a genuinely good movie, and I think that's a little bit disappointing, because I truly do think that this is not only a good movie, I think it's a great movie. In fact, in this video, I hope to convince each and every one of you that this movie is truly an underrated masterpiece. I mean, you could probably tell that from the title of the video, so... Wait, almost? What do you mean, almost? How dare you think otherwise? I will kill... Part 1. Understanding the characters. So people seem to have a problem with the main characters in this movie, specifically Davy Stone, played by Adam Sandler, and Whitey Duvall, played by Adam Sandler. People also have a problem with Whitey's sister, played by it's Adam Sandler again, okay. There's also these recurring deer that are played by Adam Sandler. Okay, I think I'm starting to understand the problem. See, I think some people only see these characters as Adam Sandler putting on funny voices, and that's it. No character depth, no motive, absolutely nothing.
You get nothing! You lose! Good day, sir!
And while I could see that it could be very distracting, I also think you need to look past that to truly understand what this movie is about. First of all, we've got Davy Stone, which is just vanilla Adam Sandler. He's an alcoholic 20-something-year-old wash-up who's constantly causing havoc and ruining everyone's good time, especially around the holidays, so he's become despised by the entire town.
You're a creep! Go away! We're having a good time until you showed up, cheapers! Go have some coffee with cream or something! Because I'll tell you something! This is a happy place!
We learn from some context that he wasn't always like this, as he used to be a good kid who was the star basketball player, constantly winning games for the JCC. As a contrary to his current personality, which is perfectly summed up when the judge plans on sentencing him to 10 years in the slammer if he doesn't clean up his act. Now, we'll get back to the courthouse later, because that's where we're introduced to another important character, but for now I want to focus on Davy. Throughout the movie, he continues to act like a jerk, perhaps even more so than before his warning from the judge. This probably turns some people off from the character and the movie as a whole, but what people fail to understand is that not only does Davy have a reason to act this way, it's a pretty relatable reason at that.
Spoiler alert, by the way, just warning you right now, just wanted to let you know, okay, got it, thank you, love you, bye.
We learned that at one of his basketball games during the holiday season many years ago, Davy basically single-handedly wins the game for his team after being behind by a massive amount of points. However, we're constantly reminded of the fact that Davy's parents aren't at the game, despite it being almost over. Throughout the montage of Davy making a comeback, we're foreshadowed as to the gruesome demise of the parents, who were on their way to the game when a truck collided with them and killed them instantly. Now imagine being in Davy's shoes. You're 12 years old, a very nice and popular kid, only being nice to those around you. And you find out that your parents just suddenly cease to exist anymore, with the only remnant of them being an unopened Hanukkah card. How could anyone, especially a kid, be expected to take this news in stride? This, right here, is the turning point for Davy. He becomes extremely closed off, super defensive, and, in his own words, his warm heart turned to ice. He realizes that nothing in the past mattered. How he acted, what he did, those who he was nice to, and treated with respect. It wouldn't change the fact that his parents were gone. It was so unfair to happen to anyone, especially someone like Davy, who absolutely doesn't deserve it. So a thought crosses his mind. If being nice and loving resulted in this, then what's the point in continuing to do so? So yeah, I understand why Davy is a jerk, but we can also see that Davy himself hates the way he acts, and has felt this way for so long, and never truly came to terms with the fact that his parents are dead, that he doesn't know how to change. That is until we are introduced to our other main character in the film. Whitey Duvall is a 70-ish midget,
Preferred term is little person.
who's been a youth basketball referee for the past 30-ish years. He decides to take Davy under his wings to try to reform him before the judge is able to sentence him to his imprisonment. I'll get more to the connection of these two characters later, which I honestly believe to be one of the movie's best attributes, but for now let's just focus on the character himself. Whitey is also voiced by Sandler, but he's using a funny voice to do so. A lot of people are bothered by his voice, but I actually quite enjoy it, and here's why. Whitey is just one of the most pleasant people to interact with. Despite his shortcomings, he's constantly helping out anyone and everyone, despite how many people treat him. It's not like his life is terrible. He's got a roof over his head, and at least a few people in the town treat him with respect, including his fraternal twin sister Eleanor. But damn, everybody else in this town either completely ignores him or treats him like shit, despite his unforgiving hospitality, and that goes a long way in what makes Whitey a great character. Not to mention he can do a sick robot. Part 2. Understanding the Connections. Now, I could go over every single major character in this movie, but that'd take far too long, and the less said about Rob Schneider's performance as the Chinese waiter, or the deer, the better. Just please trust me on this one. I'm doing this for your well-being. Instead, I feel like it's important to understand the connection between the characters of Davy Stone and Whitey Duvall, and why their personal arcs separated and together make this movie amazing. To do so, we have to study the story of this movie a little bit more. Believe it or not, the movie isn't about Davy. Hell, it isn't even about Whitey. Instead, it's about the two of them, and how they changed each other's lives for the better. Before we go on, I'd just like to say that the chemistry between these two is honestly one of the best facets of the movie. Davy's general lack of self-caring and self-centered personality really play well off of Whitey's optimistic and cheerful attitude, and I think that's because while Davy has some hostility towards Whitey, he doesn't want to see him get physically hurt or in pain. Sure, he's constantly putting him down and being a constant thorn in his side, in fact more so than with any of the other characters in the movie, but he's never putting him in any dangerous harm. The worst he's ever done is push him down the hill in a porta potty and freeze him, but it's clear that he would never do something like actually try to kill him, despite Whitey constantly getting on his last nerve. And it's not like Whitey's completely scot-free. He said quite a few things that were extremely out of line, especially his reaction to Davy's trailer catching on fire. You could argue that Davy's attitude towards Whitey is because of his forced involvement with him via the judge, but I do truly think that it's because he cares, at least a little bit. Let's get on with the stories now, starting with Davy. So Davy's got a bunch of different plot threads going on, from having to deal with working with Whitey for the foreseeable future, to dealing with an old flame because it's an Adam Sandler movie, and when has a forced love interest ever not been included in a movie of his? But definitely the most important plot thread is that he has to deal with coming to the terms of his parents' death. We actually don't learn that his parents died until a little after halfway through the film, and we don't learn about the cause of death until about the 3/4 mark. Until this point, all we know is Davy used to be a good kid, something happened, and from then on in, he's been a jerk. While being forced to stay with Whitey and Eleanor after his trailer burns down, he begins to let his guard down and acts more tolerable to those around him, even cutting out alcohol. However, once the story of his parents' demise is retold, he is #triggered and goes back on a downward spiral, becoming more drunk than he's ever been before. This all culminates in him breaking into the mall, where yes, the magic of capitalism and advertisements are able to get him to let his guard down, and he cries for the first time since his parents' passing. This is the point where Davy truly has a change of heart, and this is the climax of his biggest plot thread. Whitey's main plot thread revolves around reforming Davy and making sure that he stays out of trouble. But I'd argue that the most important plot thread in regards to Whitey is regarding winning the Dukesbury All-Star Patch. See, Whitey does truly enjoy doing good things for people, and being an overall enjoyable person, but he also wants to be recognized by the town for constantly helping out, and rightfully so, seeing as most of the time he's treated like complete and utter crap. A part of me feels like he knows he's not going to win the patch, since he's been doing the same shtick for 35 years and still hasn't won, and just has a mad case of denial, but let the guy live a little, okay? Unfortunately, once the banquet for the patch rolls around and Whitey doesn't win the patch, he falls into a bout of depression, realizing the town doesn't care about him, and that's seemingly where his plot thread ends. Is what I would say if that was the case. See, these plot threads intertwine and develop to their true climax because of the connection between Whitey and Davy, which all started at the courthouse. Whitey was the one who originally opened Davy's wound in regards to his parents' death by retelling the story at the skating rink and trying to convince Davy to open up with his emotions instead of having a cold heart, which is what subconsciously inspired him to do so at the mall. In turn, at the skating rink, Davy clues Whitey in that nobody in the town cares about him or likes him or knows that he exists, which imbues Whitey with self-doubt. Davy, however, is able to convince the town of their terrible behavior towards Whitey, and even convince them to reconsider giving the patch to Whitey, in a scene scarily similar to that of the newsroom scene in Has Been Hotel, except here it's done a lot better and done to a better effect, and it is not a waste of time. Oh, and speaking of which... Anyways, the connection between these two characters is honestly such a great aspect of the film, especially when both of them make each other's lives better in return. The best way to summarize this is when you mix the most hated person in town with the person most taken for granted, you get quite the duo. Part 3. Who says adult animation looks ugly? There's this weird stigma that all adult animation looks bad because companies don't need to try as hard to entice adults. As long as it's entertaining, adults will cling to it. We don't need fluid, colorful animation that's pleasing to the eyes. If Robot Chicken taught me anything, it's that as long as you take something nostalgic and make it curse and bleed and poop and sex and drink, adults will find it funny.
Poop! He pooped! Poop-a-doop-doop-poop!
But in all honesty, this movie looks amazing, and with a bit of research, it's not hard to see how and why. The animation studio is basically the same one behind the movie The Iron Giant, which is another movie that just looks phenomenal. And hey, if you didn't know that, you could probably tell via the similarities with the budget versus grossing for each movie. The backgrounds are gorgeous and do a good job conveying the environment. Outdoor scenes feel cold yet beautifully eerie, while indoor scenes all feel warm and wholesome, and this is in large part due to the coloring scheme of the movie. The movement feels natural and pleasant to look at. Honestly, this is just a really good looking 2D animated film. And the soundtrack is superb as well. Say what you will about Adam Sandler as an actor, but I really do think he's a good musician. Even when he's singing as Whitey, he somehow manages to stay on key the whole time. My personal favorite is Bum Biddy towards the end of the film, but the most impressive is definitely Technical Foul, in which you get the full spectrum of Sandler's vocal range. When all the characters singing are just Sandler, all with different voices, yet he's somehow not only able to stay on key with all of them, he manages to make them sound good. Like really, really good. Kudos, Mr. Sandler. Just... please stop shoving that damn Hanukkah song in my face every damn year. I get it, it's the most mainstream Hanukkah song on the market. That doesn't mean it's the only one. Part 4. Okay, here's the deal. You're probably saying to yourself, but Dan, all you've been doing is praising the movie. When will you get to the almost part? I haven't done that in years. I honestly don't remember the actual voice I did. You're right, I've only been praising the movie thus far, but I've had to do that to get it to that underrated masterpiece status, since it's currently sort of at that guilty pleasure movie status at best for many people. I think I've done a good job explaining why I think this movie is great, but I haven't done a good job talking about what keeps this movie from truly becoming an underrated masterpiece. To me, I can forgive every minor flaw that this movie has against it, but I can't forgive two things. Those being the gross-out humor and the non-sequiturs. If we're being honest, anytime this movie attempts humor that doesn't fall under one of those two categories, it basically nails it, and in an unironic manner at that. But hot damn, is this movie filled to the brim with gross-out humor and non-sequiturs. There's constantly farting, and shitting, and eating of said shit, and boogers, and armpit hair, and all that stuff thrown in your face almost one after the other, and thanks to the amazing animation, it looks even more uncanny because of how beautiful it is.
Is this how you get your sick kicks?
What? It's just an ordinary crabby. Oh my goodness!
And besides that, you've got these stupid non-sequiturs placed throughout the movie that just really take you out of the moment, especially in emotional and serious parts. Like when Davy and What's-Her-Face are singing about their past and you've constantly got Whitey chiming in with stupid nonsense lines. It's really stupid. I don't know why this bothers me as much as it does, but damn does it bother me. What's worse is, that's really all I have to say on the matter. You probably expected me to go into more detail as to what keeps this from being an underrated masterpiece, and to be honest, I expected that too. But there's really not that much else I could say about the topic, so I guess it's just time to get to... Part 5. The bottom line. Also, my freezer's ice machine is on now, and I'm too lazy to change what I'm doing, so I'm sorry if that's being picked up in the background, but... you know, whatever. So to recap, I think the movie is really unironically good. It tells the story of how two losers who you'd think would never become friends come together and make each other's lives better. The characters are all really enjoyable, and the chemistry works well between our two leads. Not to mention the animation and soundtrack are some of the best I've seen. No joke, I listen to the soundtrack constantly and it's a banger. And it's funny too for the most part. I've laughed harder at this than I have at a good amount of other movies, and this is my 15th rewatch of the film. So what keeps it from being an underrated masterpiece? Well, simply put, it's an Adam Sandler movie. And as such, it's got certain... how do I put this? Adam Sandlerisms that are impossible to overlook, especially the gross-out humor and non-sequiturs. And when they're noticeable, they're really fucking noticeable, and distracting and annoying at that matter. The fact that the movie is animated makes the gross-out humor alone more unbearable, since they can get away with a lot more with animation.
They say in an animation, you're only limited to your imagination.
Now, is it possible that I'm extremely biased towards the movie? Yes, absolutely. Unlike some of my friends in this marathon, I've had quite a history with this movie. I saw it first over 12 years ago with my sister, and I've watched it every year with her since. So perhaps I have a deep-seated love of this film. I'll let you be the judge of that. I even have the original DVD that we watched it on. You know, actually, this DVD is really chock full of some cool special features, including a live recording of Adam Sandler's Hanukkah song. So we're just gonna skip that because I think you know why. And what's this? A Day with the Meatball? I actually think I remember seeing this like years ago, but it's been a while, so maybe I'll revisit it again.
What happens when I switch the numbers? 1 plus 6 equals 7. And what happens when we have 7 plus 0? 7. Very good. Let's do the opposite.
What? What?
What the fuck?
What do you have planned for dessert?
Room service.
Oh, fuck everything I just said. This topped the movie in every aspect.
There are certain rules which apply in one's life with your sister, friends, or imaginary wife.
I can't believe I haven't killed myself here with Winks McGee and the furry elf.
I